who will introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks the planning permission for the demolition of the Zaza Grill restaurant and replacement with 6 dwellings. So the application site's along Trumpington Road, it's further to the south here of the village of Trumpington near High Street. Long road is running eastwards here. North Cottages, which is a private lane, runs immediately to the south of the site. And yes, Trumpington Road, one of the main arterial routes into the city centre. So just to show an aerial view of the site. So currently mainly hard standing. There are some single story outbuildings extensions to the Zaza Grill building at the back. North Cottage properties, some to the back here, and you won't see them behind the trees, but there's properties behind here. So this is an old photo taken of the front canopy and signs, for example, have been taken down since, just to give you an idea about the building, where it sits in this context. These are Nightingale cottages here, and moving to the right there would be number 1 North Cottages, and that's number 2, the background there. So it's looking for the neighbours just at the rear of the site, so again there's lots of single-story additions, some of which are subject to an enforcement investigation. That's pending the outcome of this application. So that's Nightingale cottages there, the number 1's in the background there. So there's basements proposed throughout, it takes a sort of linear form here. You've got the main sort of front block, if you would, which is 3 stories of scale. The front of the building is the gravel plan here. And then going further to the back, you've got sort of this muse style development, where it's 1.5 story developments, some of which have first floor terraces, but there are basements throughout, some of which serve bedrooms, some not. Then on the ground floor, you've got the main entrance in through here, 2 car parking spaces in the front. Some have integral car parking, and then cycle parking is usually provided internally within the building footprint. So moving on to the first floor, so the end building is unit 4, or unit 1, sorry, for my own, if you heard me correctly. Back there is a 3-bedroom property. You can see here there's a gap being introduced. I'll go through the amendments from what was originally proposed to this soon, but there's a gap here where there's a first floor terrace in this location. And then this unit has similar, it's 2-bedroom up here, and then the first floor terrace there. And then the first floor and second floor in the front building, these are duplex apartments, so you've got the main sort of living space bedrooms on the first floor, and then additional space up on the second floor. So this is the main street view, if you would, looking from Trumpington Road. So 2 stories, flat roof with extra story on the top. In terms of material finish, it's number 1 here. Looking at the maximum number 2 to 4, the cottages there, Nightingale cottages here. So this is effectively looking from those properties along North Cottages here, looking northwards. So you see there's gaps being introduced, sort of regular intervals there. So the top diagram is looking at the rear of the site, effectively by North Cottages. This is right back at the site. And this is looking, if you would, internally looking back down to the south. That's the main frontage of those properties at the back. So probably the image at the bottom is for us to look at, but just showing you a section through how the building relates to adjacent properties in North Cottages. And again, this is deeper into the plot, so numbers 2 to 4 just show the relationship to 25-degree lines and how the proposal relates to those north-facing windows, because the majority of, I'll go through the properties, but there are single aspect north-facing windows, not the windows face out towards the site. So I hope this comes out okay, but this is number 4, so they've got a first floor terrace up here, for example, got dual aspect windows here. There's a kitchen window, approximately there, so I'll get clear to the screen again. The main window, which has been subject to amendments really, is the dining room living window, which I'll show you photos from the side. There's also a bedroom window upstairs, as well as a dual aspect house room at the top. So this is looking from that living room window. our concern when the application originally came in was that by introducing a two-storey element this close to this neighbour's window, it was going to have a visually enclosing impact to the detriment of their amenity. So I'll go through the amendments, but this was one of the principal concerns that we had when we were looking at the proposal. Again, these are just looking from the first floor windows and the terrace area. And number 3 is a bit different. It has their bedrooms on the ground floor and then this open plan living room kitchen on the top floor. So from the ground floor, the 2 bedroom windows, you can see this is the illegal outbuilding that was constructed. A copy of the appeal decision should be included in the appendix of that, but that was deemed to be visually dominant by the inspector. And that's looking from the first floor windows of the open plan kitchen dining room. This is number 1, more cottages. Again, a lot of windows facing out towards the application site, so this is the existing building here. So bedrooms at the top, clear, more capital spaces down below. Kitchen, dining room, they're 2 single aspect windows in this elevation. So this is looking from that ground floor kitchen window, for example. So looking more to the right, you can see the building there. Looking straight out, it's currently not in view. I'd just like to refer paragraph 8.39 of my report. I've set the distance between this window and the edge of the first floor. The proposed development is 10 metres, but on the remeasure it's around just over 9.5 metres I make it, so I just want to make that clear to members when considering this. This is looking out that dining room window. And this is looking, they have this snuggle on the end which has 2 windows facing out. So you can see on the bottom right image there, there's also a view out in that direction, which this left-hand window roughly represents. And that's the view out to the side of the existing building. But as a dual aspect, we're comfortable with that relationship. And these are from the first floor bedroom windows, where again you can see the existing building here. It's the nearest bedroom window. So just show the amendments. So on top of the original drawings, as they were originally proposed, and below I've got the revised drawings. So there have been some quite significant amendments. The main ones relate to this first floor up here. So you can see gaps have been introduced again here, here, and here. Changes to the height taking place as well. This was to overcome our concerns about the enclosure on some of those windows of more cottages. It's personal to note though that the building footprint has been shifted forward slightly as a result of these amendments. So just bear that in mind. That my report is based on this, but just bear that in mind that the building footprint shifted forward slightly compared to the original. And just looking at section through the differences, where they originally had this top story here, which would have exacerbated that impact, but now that's been removed and pushed back. So these are some perspective views looking down the terrace, just after sketches of what the proposal may look like. So that's looking from the north cottages on the right hand side here, looking down the lane. And this is looking from the north side of Trumpington Road, just at the proposal and how it fits in. So overall, for the reasons stated in the report, approval is recommended. I'd just like to point out that I've added a couple of paragraphs on the amendment sheet to do with drainage. I noticed I omitted to put that in my assessment, but the conditions were in there, and hopefully that satisfies that point. But yes, approval is recommended on the conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Janelle Roberts.
Is it possible just to give a handout?
What's your microphone?
Middle button. Right.
Hello. Is it possible to give a handout? It's what I'm going to say, but it would just help me because I'm
I
not
think
used
the
to
problem with handouts is that we haven't had an opportunity to read them in advance, and I don't like to hold up proceedings while people are given an opportunity to read them. So I think they should have been handed out perhaps at the beginning of the meeting.
I did ask the lady that is the organiser, and she told me to
Are there
ask
points
you.
in what you have written which you are not going to include in your remarks?
There is a drawing like figures.
It's mostly pictures which are important to look at. So.
There is a drawing.
Yeah.
And is that what you're particularly anxious that we should see?
Yes,
Or then please distribute it.
thank you.
Just a moment,
Sorry.
just a moment.
Just to be helpful, if they're already on public file, then that's fine. If they're not, then just have a need to see when actually at this late stage they can't be submitted. But if they're on public file already, that's okay.
Are they on the public file?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
they are.
The drawing is. I want to
So
show you
please,
the
please
drawing.
sit down.
This one.
Yeah, you put that on top of that. It's just that drawing, is it?
That's the one I want to speak to.
Just that drawing.
No. Well, I'll speak to everything, but that's the one I want them to see.
You want to draw our attention.
Yeah, I
to
just
the
want to
drawing.
draw your attention because it's got
Michael, is
measurements.
this acceptable?
I think obviously as procedure, it's your choice, but that document I put online yesterday, so that is on public access as a viewable file. I can't verify whether the dimensions she stated in there are definitely correct or not.
Well, given those caveats, we're pleased to receive the drawing.
Can I speak now? Sorry. Excuse me, looking at the front of the document, I'm not sure that document exactly is online because we certainly haven't seen it.
Sorry, Chair. I'll refer to one drawing specifically. There's one specific drawing only. I haven't seen the rest of them, but one about overbearing impact was
The trouble
definitely.
is the drawing comes within a whole document that has got a great deal of stuff in it which it is disputed has been online. So, yes, what do you want to say?
Can we give Mike a copy and he can have a look through it? And if they are all on public file, then yes, they can be circulated. If they're not, they can't be. That's the
Is
right
he in a
way.
position to verify?
He'll choose to know what's been submitted.
Right, well, we're just going to pause for a
If
moment.
there's any doubt, then they can't be submitted.
Well, I'm here to introduce you to North Cottages. It's a unique and little known community, 17 Victorian cottages tucked away on a private road between the old volunteer pub and Long Road, just off Trumpington Road. And the purpose of me presenting today is actually not to ask the committee to approve or reject this application. What I'm asking the committee to do today is, through the discussions that we're having now, is to actually defer the application until some of the issues that I'm going to talk to you about now, you'll have time to look. There's been a number of documents that went up. I think 20 documents went on the website yesterday and the day before. The website was offline for about 48 hours over the weekend, so I'm not sure with one of the documents being one of the architects, like the applicant's own document was submitted. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to see it. So that's why I'm asking that the application be deferred until the next meeting so that we can all, or everybody, you guys in particular, have the opportunity to review it. The recommendation I say to defer is because we believe that the site plan is inaccurate, that the case that Michael showed you, the overbearing nature that was agreed for the first submission, that allowed them to then reduce, or was agreed that reduced the height and moved the building, it resulted in moving the building forward and actually 1 metre closer to number 1 North Cottages. All the reasons that the original application were agreed were overbearing, those issues now apply to number 1, but those issues haven't been addressed for number 1. So number 1 now has a new building 1 metre closer than the existing building and 9 metres forward than the existing building. The new building or proposed building will now cover more than 50% of the facade of number 1 North Cottages, and you need to remember there are no rear windows in number 1. There are 16 windows in number 1 North Cottages. It's a construction that's already started. A plan was approved here at council a few months ago, earlier this year. Of my 16 windows, 10 of those windows in my house are covered by this new building, and those windows haven't been assessed. There's no window schedule being done for all of those windows. Anyway, we've got to
Yeah, you should have 30 seconds.
Oh,
Please
okay.
continue.
So I'm also concerned about the lack of green space, and I believe that other people will talk about that, and you can see all those. And also, Michael put up a slide there which was to do with the overlooking into my rear garden. I don't believe that, so if I can just have a minute for you to pull it up. Keep going. No, the slide the document that was put on the website yesterday or late yesterday afternoon from the applicant, which is a diagram pointing to the cottages, my back garden, you'll see that every window in the development overlooks my back garden. So with 10 of my 16 windows covered, and every window looking into my back garden, what privacy am I going to have?
Is that your...
Well, that's sort of the main thrust of it.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you for your...
Okay, thank you.
for that clarification. Michael, is it possible to... Right, you will come to this. Yes, Rupert Carpen.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and Councillors. Just a very brief response to those comments. The only documents that were posted online from us yesterday were visuals that were requested by Michael just to clarify the perspective. So I don't think anything new's gone on. There were a lot of documents from One North Cottages. But I'm speaking as part owner of the property at 60 Trumpington Road. We acquired what was an empty and semi-derelict property almost exactly 2 years ago. We were acutely aware of the sensitivities of the site due to the proximity of surrounding houses, and we therefore sought to engage with nearby residents and planning officers at an early stage. We carried out public consultation in March 2016, personally visiting all properties within 400 metres at least twice. 63% of households responded, and the results showed strong support for a residential scheme. Our architects designed a well-considered and contemporary scheme for 3 houses and 5 flats, which was submitted for pre-application advice in June 2016. Following the pre-app, the scheme was amended and resubmitted twice, as Michael has alluded to. Changes included the removal of 2 flats, setting the proposed houses further back from 2 to 4 North Cottages, as the proximity to these houses was especially sensitive, setting back the roof to reduce the scale of the front building, which had better impact on 1 North Cottages, incorporating roof terraces on the houses at the suggestion of the landscape officer. Officers indicated support for the amended designs, and the application was submitted in March this year. A public consultation was then held on site with details sent to residents and ward councillors. Neighbours raised concerns, particularly about the scale of houses opposite 2 to 4 North Cottages and the roof terraces, and although daylight and sunlight tests were above BRE guidance, we opted to remove the roof terraces, and we've subsequently reduced the scale further by removing the whole of the first floor of House 2 and part of House 3. I hope the flexibility we have shown demonstrates that over a protracted period we have taken on board officers' comments and neighbours' concerns where they were felt reasonable, and have worked extremely hard to produce an appropriate scheme which we believe successfully complements and enhances the surrounding historic context. I think all will agree that this site requires regeneration and enhancement, with the existing building and sea of tarmac being less than attractive. We believe that a residential scheme is a more desirable neighbouring use to those in the vicinity than a curry restaurant that was heavily reliant on takeaway trade and had a 1 AM licence. The design has evolved in response to a thorough consultation process over the past 15 months, and we're pleased that it's received officer support. We very much hope that councils will support the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirby. Councillor O'Connell, you have unlimited time, but could you restrict yourself to something comparable to the 2 speakers who also already spoken?
I shall. Thank you very much, Chair. I and the other local... Sorry. Yes. I and other local residents I've spoken to agree with the principle of redevelopment of this site. In particular, paragraphs 8.2 through 8.18 of the officer's report. We do not believe that a restaurant or a pub on this site is viable, and we do believe that a residential block is a suitable replacement. We do, however, have some concerns about the nature of the plan as it is submitted. I think it could be made into something workable should it be deferred. On the topic about the bearing and loss of light, the 2 points I'd like to raise. Firstly, in relation to paragraph 8.21, which is on page 148, Long Road is a very different character to Trumpington Road. Trumpington Road is quite leafy. It separates Cambridge from Trumpington quite well, whereas Long Road is much more built up and has been for some time. 8.22 concedes that the new block would certainly be more visually prominent. 8.47 to 8.50 on pages 155 and 156 concern the previous appeal. The inspector has already looked at the issues of overbearing and loss of light on this site, and actually ruled against development on the ground of outlook on the basis of the building out of the back. Paragraph 8.50 of the officer's report have acknowledged that the views of whether this is acceptable or not are subjective rather than objective. It would certainly, from my perspective, the ward council, I've not done planning training, it seemed to me to be quite reasonable for the committee to defer this on the grounds of policy 3.4 of the local plan, should they wish to, which is the same grounds the inspector gave for upholding the previous appeal in relation to the building at the back. Members will hopefully have noted the outstanding objections from landscaping and street open spaces, which are discussed at 8.32 and 8.33 on pages 151. The argument set out in favour of development is that the current building, the proposed building, is an improvement on the current building. This implies option's choice, take it or leave it. Personally, I disagree with that assessment. I do not believe that in Cambridge, of all places, we're going to see a plot of land lie fallow for a long period of time. And I think it is reasonable to hold out for something better, and we believe this plan can be modified to be something better and be acceptable to the landscaping and to the open spaces team. My final point is on fire and emergency access. There was an issue in North Cottages recently where a fire engine had difficulty gaining access. It's already quite a narrow lane, and at the very end of it is not in accordance with current fire regulations. But as I understand it, the fire brigade can just about get there with the current hoses. Unfortunately, there is a dispute over land ownership, which is not a planning consideration. But the bit of land that's being taken for part of development does form part of the lane, and the fire engine can effectively use drive over to get to the back of North Cottages. The narrowest point taken to plan, because measurements are not given in the applicant's plans, would appear to be 3.2 metres after development work, whereas the recommended minimum is 3.7, and at that point it's come to 4 metres. This is around 1 and 2 North Cottages. You can see it on the plan on page 15 of your plan pack, where it narrows down. I don't think this is necessarily a reason to reject the application at all, but it would be helpful, I believe, if conditions could be attached if any development should satisfy the officer and any other interested bodies that appropriate emergency services access is still possible after the development has completed. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Open to discussion by members. Councillor Blanco. Sorry, excuse me. Thank you. Councillor Blanco.
Yeah, I mean, clearly this site has been derelict and underused for a lengthy time, and doesn't seem to be any objection to the principle of housing development on the site. Therefore, we then look at it in terms of its impact in the streetscape, with an eye on the relationship with the neighbouring properties, and obviously with our sort of housing policies and local plan policies, encouraging good design and obviously providing a mix of units and effective use of the land. In terms of relationship, clearly the sensitive relationship has been clearly outlined by objectors, and we've had emails, and there's obviously been a fair number of representations on the public file, which I think have given us a fair degree of the concerns raised. We have to judge them against the officer recommendation. The officer has clearly addressed a lot of those concerns. In terms of some of them, there is a judgment to be made. But having looked at the site, having looked at the representations, having looked at the report, I think there's a level of evidence here, I think, which says there will be an impact, but the impacts are not significant enough, as far as I can see, for us to, for me as a planning committee member, to defer from the recommendation in this case. I'm quite happy to defer from recommendations when I think they're wrong, but I've weighed this up and have a look at the relationships that are likely to be produced by this development. Yes, clearly the previous iteration was less than favourable, and the amendments with the breaking of the regularity of the building line along the side of the cottages, I think is to be welcomed. There will be issues of highway sort of visibility when it come out, but that's been the case for the public use, for the restaurant use. There's no difference in that regard. I mean, in theory, there should be less use than a busy pub or restaurant use would have provided. When it was a busy pub, there was an awful lot of to and fro on that frontage. I accept there's a point being raised by the landscape team, and Michael covers that and he accepts their point but doesn't agree with it. And I think in terms of the open bland frontage at the moment, a degree of treescape and landscape is to be welcomed. I support the recommendation.
Yes, I endorse Councillor Benio's thoughts. I think it may be a bit of an unsettling experience or prospect for people in North Terrace, but I do think that the greater good is this rather imaginative scheme. I think it's very refreshing to have something that is as bold and attractive as this is, particularly on one of the main approaches to Cambridge. It's good to have something that makes you sit up and say, this is unlike every other entrance to every other town. So I think we've got many positive features. What I would like to ask the case officer is to show us in more detail the amount of landscaping, because this front onto Trumpington Road is extremely important. I think it's the most beautiful arrival point in the whole of the city, and this filling this one unpleasant gap is a great opportunity to have the tree-lined full hedge and flowers as you go down the road. So I'd like some more detail on that, but I do think it's been thought through in quite a sensitive way, and I hope that the residents of North Cottage will realise the effort that's gone into it. I think it's a successful proposal.
That's just smart.
Okay, a lot of representations from residents, including those who want to do, I think we've already in mind. So the officer stated that we've moved forward slightly. So with all due respect, we do need a figure. Slightly could mean any number of things, especially when the distance is quite short anyway. So we need to know exactly what the figure is, not a sort of emotive term like slightly. So one of the speakers has mentioned a metre, so I don't know if that's the same figure or even the same distance we're talking about in terms of where that figure is going over, but that'd be useful to know. Is the private road means unadopted, I presume, and is that a factor in terms of this new development using that road and having access to it? On the late documents, I'm not quite clear on that. So in terms of common sense, it would be appropriate, I would have thought, for residents and others to have access to any documents that are part of this application. And if they've not had the chance to have access to them, is that a factor in terms of whether we can consider this today? What was said was that it had been offline for 48 hours and the late documents were put on very, very recently, so I'm concerned about that. And on 6.9, I think as Councillor Blencoe has alluded to, the landscape team are concerned about the parking spaces being where they are and taking away from their sort of landscaping of the scheme. And could the officer talk about that? I believe you might have mentioned it, Michael, I'm not sure, but if you could just mention those spaces and how they got there. I think that's about it. Just to say, this has obviously been a fairly fast-moving scheme in terms of the way it's changed over time, especially more recently up to the date today. And are you sure, Michael, that the scheme you presented to us today is the scheme that's planned to be built, or are there any aspects to it that have changed since the pictures you've shown to us today have been changed by the applicant?
Right, do you want to come back on some of those questions?
Yeah, just to come back on some of those points. If I refer to I'll start with the landscaping aspect. If I refer to the ground floor plan, maybe, where is it? So the concern raised previously, the distance from the edge of the building, not including the basement, the edge of the building to the road was about 17 metres between the sort of edge of the wall, not including the basement, to the front of the site. Now that's gone down to 13.9 metres of this, so it's been moved 3.1 metres further forward. Just a more specific figure on that in terms of the two-storey building line. Previously, there would have been more space as a result as moved forward for landscaping. The concern raised by street open spaces and landscaping is that by having a basement this close to some of those trees, it obviously makes it a bit more difficult for, in terms of roots, to make sure the tree fits into there well. Ultimately, the way we have to look at it is the existing situation is this, where there is little to no real soft landscaping along this frontage, and it's even quoted in the suburbs and the protest study as being effectively a bit of a blight on the street scene. I think that by introducing, although there may not be massive trees, don't be wrong, it may have to be slightly smaller, but I think there's space to incorporate some kind of trees there, my view. And in terms of parking, 2 parking spaces, let's say, are proposed here. Previously, they were included within sort of the undercroft building, right thinking, and also this property in the middle has lost its car parking space in order to compensate for the space loss at the top, in order to alleviate that impact on the neighbour. So that's why some of the car park has been relocated to the front. It wasn't previously there, but again, considering its existing context, I think it's an improvement, and that aspect is okay. In terms of the additional information then, sort of procedural matters, yes, the public access system was offline for sort of the weekend, I understand. I think the IT team are doing upgrades, but nevertheless, the new information has been put on the 31st of October. Those were those perspective drawings referred to at the end and do not form part of the approved drawings package. So my feeling is that they're for illustrative purposes only, and that there's nothing materially new, we haven't changed anything in terms of where windows are going, for example, that I think warrants a reconsultation. So I don't think, obviously the plans as they showed there are what we're approving. In terms of that lane, it is a private lane, it's not adopted highway. If they want to use that, they need to get the consent of the landowners to do that, but previously they did have, sorry to keep jumping around, they did have a pedestrian route proposed along here as well as gates leading out onto there, but they've since removed them following concerns raised by the owners of that lane. So there's no reason they need to go on that lane as far as I can see based on the plans. So if they want to get access to it, they need to do that separately through legal matters. I think that responds to the main questions raised. Thank you, Chair.
So far as the landscaping on Trumpington Road is concerned, I would like to draw your attention to 831 and 833, where I think the officer concerned is quite prepared to admit that he would have preferred a more ambitious scheme of landscaping, but that such measures as are envisaged will certainly enhance the streetscape, and I agree with that. I'd like to take this opportunity also to talk about something which has to do with planning procedure. I've received a number of representations from people who seem to be expressing some concern with respect to the discussions which take place between applicants and officers. And someone has raised very particularly the matter of whether expressions used by officers such as "we are now satisfied" doesn't constitute some kind of collusion. I would simply like to point out that the policy of this planning authority, as in virtually every other planning authority in the country, is that applicants are invited to meet with officers before they put a formal application for determination to discuss the proposal, and that the officers will at that point raise with the applicant any concerns that they might have about the acceptability of the application, in the hope that the applicant will adjust the proposal accordingly. And this is certainly what has happened in this particular instance. Do remember that the officers have got to make up their minds what to recommend. They're not making the decision other than the decision to recommend. We make the decision as to whether that recommendation is to be followed or not. So please do understand that the fact that officers and applicants have spoken to each other, that they have come to a degree of agreement about what they can now safely recommend, does not constitute collusion or conspiracy or any of those nasty words which have been thrown around the last few days. So having got that off my chest, we'll now go on to further discussion. Councillor Smart.
So thanks for letting me come back, Chair. So,
Sorry, I'm invited to ask Michael Hammond to come back before you speak, so you hold on a moment.
Yeah, sorry, really quick. I was going from 1 to 200, there are then 1 to 100 on the plans. It's about 1.5 metres difference in terms of the building footprint at the front, not 3 metres, because I was going off the scale that was wrong, so it's 1.5 metres to be clear.
thank you. So that's 1.5 metres closer to North Terrace.
The road.
The road, sorry. Okay, I wasn't quite clear about that. So I was also concerned about number 1, North Terrace, is it called? Cottages, sorry. Cottages. And so the drawings and design you showed earlier, you gave the 25 degrees rule of thumb line to the sort of overlooking and so on. So have you done that for number 1, North Cottages, with the revisions in terms of where they stand with this new development, and does it work for them? Because I understood from what the speaker has said, it didn't seem to work for her at all.
Yeah, just to come back to that point, Chair. So this is the sort of relevant plan. I think if you were to do a 25-degree line, it would inevitably break that. What the implication of that is that you then need to do a daylight and sunlight assessment on the affected rooms. That's been undertaken, and the results of that have shown that the impact in terms of daylight particularly, because bearing in mind that this is north of those neighbours, it's daylight that's the key, that impact is okay. So based on the evidence they've submitted, we're happy with that relationship. I think that paragraph 8.39 of my report does sort of weigh up that in terms of the visual dominance, which is a bit more subjective, rather than being about daylight. My feeling is that, based on what they've submitted, that it's not gone far enough forward, or it's not quite tall enough to warrant it being refused in terms of that impact. In my opinion, I think it is okay, based on my site visit and having seen the plans.
Thank you. I think we're ready to proceed to a vote. The officer recommendation is one of approval. All those in favour of that recommendation please indicate. And those against? It is carried. We are therefore resolved to
Unanimous.
approve.
Not quite, Chair.
No, I'm not. I wasn't allowed to vote.
You weren't going to vote.
Oh, you weren't here at the beginning?
Please.
Okay.
So she didn't, that's why it's 7.
Right, so it's a 7-0. Right, we now come on to City Live.
I would just like to say before we go, Mr.
No,
Chairman,
no, I was going to say anything.
I'm going to say it anyway,
No,
that
well, you
there are
can say it,
3
but Mel must
lies
be hearing
spoken
you,
here
so-
that I have no chance of
You
refuting.
can't address the
3 points of fact have
Excuse
been
me,
said, which are
Be
not
careful, you're in,
fact.
you're in a public meeting, it's being recorded, whatever you say can be
Good,
used, yeah?
good. I'd like it to be recorded that I'm unable, under the auspices of your rules,
Would you
to
please leave the room?
refute 3 lies which have been stated, 3 points of fact.